Hey everyone, welcome back. Let's get into what's happening right now because Tuesday brought a pretty significant shift in the US Iran situation, and there are several other stories connected to this conflict that deserve attention. So, the ceasefire extension. So, here's where we stand. President Trump announced on Tuesday that he's extending the ceasefire with Iran. This came just hours before his own stated deadline was about to run out. American forces have been told to stand down while diplomatic channels remain open. The stated reason for this extension is that Pakistan, which has been trying to play mediator, asked for more time. Pakistan's leadership publicly thanked Trump for agreeing to the delay. But when you look at what actually happened on the ground, the picture gets a bit stranger. The American negotiating team, including Vice President Vance, never left Washington. The Iranians never left Tehran. The meeting in Islamabad that was supposedly being arranged simply didn't materialize for either side. So, what does this actually tell us? It tells us that the United States has walked into a situation where none of the available options look appealing. If the US escalates with airstrikes on Iranian infrastructure, which was the threat if no deal was reached, Iran has been very clear about its response. They would target energy facilities across the Gulf states, and this is not an empty warning. Earlier in this conflict, a single coordinated attack caused damage to facilities in places like the UAE and Qatar that will take months or even years to fully repair. The concentration of critical energy infrastructure in that region makes it unusually vulnerable. If the US instead chooses to simply maintain the naval blockade indefinitely without further military action, that also carries problems. Iran has multiple land borders. Goods still move through Turkey, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and across the Caspian Sea. The blockade hurts Iran economically, no question, but it also keeps global energy markets in a state of constant strain. Airlines are already cutting flights to conserve fuel, governments are discussing remote work to save energy. The longer this drags on, the more the physical shortage of oil starts to affect actual supply chains, not just market sentiment. And if the US tries to negotiate a way out, the dynamic has shifted. Iran knows the Americans don't have a clean military solution. They know time works in their favor politically. Any deal reached under these conditions would likely require significant American concessions, lifting sanctions, releasing frozen funds, accepting limitations on what the US can demand regarding Iran's missile program. There's also new intelligence circulating among Western analysts about Iran's remaining military capabilities. Despite weeks of strikes, assessments now suggest Iran retains access to roughly 70% of its pre-war ballistic missile stockpile and about 60% of its launchers. Many of these are stored in hardened underground facilities that are extremely difficult to target effectively. This isn't Iranian propaganda. These are conclusions being drawn by American and allied intelligence. Okay, now let's move on to the second topic, which is the situation with Afghan allies in Qatar. There's another story developing that connects to this broader picture. In Qatar, there are currently over 1,100 Afghan nationals living in limbo at an American military base. These are people who work directly with US forces during the war in Afghanistan. Translators, former members of Afghan special operations units, individuals who provided critical support based on promises of safe resettlement in the United States. The Trump administration has now presented them with two paths forward. They can return to Afghanistan, which for many would mean facing the Taliban after years of documented cooperation with American forces, or they can accept relocation to the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Congo is currently managing its own armed conflict with neighboring Rwanda, along with a serious humanitarian situation. Human rights observers have noted that this is effectively moving vulnerable people from one unstable environment to another. The State Department has described this as a responsible relocation policy, but the practical effect is that people who served alongside American troops, many of whom have family members already settled in the United States, are being told their future lies in a country they never chose and to which they have no connection. Now, the next topic is the UAE request for assistance. Another development that caught attention this week involves the United Arab Emirates. The UAE has formally approached the United States requesting financial support. This is notable because the UAE is not a country that typically asks for economic assistance. The request reveals something about the actual damage sustained during the conflict with Iran. Despite earlier public statements suggesting most incoming attacks were intercepted, the reality appears to be that key energy infrastructure took significant hits. The Emirates are now looking for help to stabilize their situation. Trump acknowledged the request and expressed some surprise given the country's reputation for wealth. The Treasury Department is exploring mechanisms to provide support, possibly through existing currency stabilization funds. Beyond the immediate financial question, this serves as a signal to Washington. The Gulf states are making it understood that any resumption of full-scale hostilities would produce economic consequences far beyond what they could manage alone. Now, the next topic is pressure on Iraq. The United States has blocked a shipment of nearly $500 million in cash destined for Iraq's central bank. This money represents proceeds from Iraqi oil sales held in the Federal Reserve System. The reason for the hold is tied directly to the activities of Iranian-backed militias operating within Iraq. These groups have launched drones and rockets at American positions and at US allies in the region throughout the conflict. Washington wants Baghdad to take concrete steps to curtail these militias. The complication is that these groups are not external actors. They are woven into Iraq's political structure. They hold seats in parliament. They are part of the governing coalition. Any attempt by the central government to forcibly disarm them would likely trigger a civil conflict that Baghdad is not equipped to win. So the US finds itself applying economic pressure without a realistic path to the outcome it seeks. Iraq maintains that it has fulfilled the requirements for the dollar shipments. The US insists the attacks must stop. Neither side appears to have a clear way forward. Now let's talk about Russia's economic reality. Finally, there's the question of how this conflict is affecting Russia. With oil prices elevated due to the disruption in the Strait of Hormuz, the assumption might be that Moscow is benefiting handsomely, and on paper, revenue is higher. But the broader Russian economy is not experiencing a corresponding boost. Production declined nearly 2% in the first 2 months of the year. Business confidence turned negative last month for the first time since 2022. Interest rates remain high enough to discourage investment across most civilian sectors. The structural issue is that Russia's economy has been reoriented around military production. Resources, labor, and capital are being directed toward the defense sector rather than toward industries that would normally generate broader growth. Higher oil revenue helps the state budget, but it doesn't fix the underlying imbalance. Putin himself noted publicly last week that the economy faces serious headwinds. Government economists are now discussing whether to revise the annual growth forecast of 1.3% further downward. Okay, all of these stories are connected by the same central reality. The conflict with Iran is not contained. It's creating secondary effects across the region and beyond. The Afghan allies stuck in Qatar, the Emirati request for financial help, the frozen dollar shipments to Iraq, the strange position Russia finds itself in. These are all consequences of a situation that shows no clear resolution. Okay, that would be it for today. See you in the next video.